I want you to stop what you're doing right now and listen to me because what I'm about to tell you could put real money in your pocket this month. And if you miss this, you're leaving cash on the table that's rightfully yours. The Social Security Administration just dropped a bombshell announcement that's got Washington buzzing. And frankly, most folks have no idea this is even happening. We're talking about payment adjustments that kick in February 20th. That's just days away. And there are specific stimulus provisions being rolled out that could mean hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars coming your way. But here's the kicker. Nobody's going to knock on your door and hand you this money. You've got to know what you're entitled to, and you've got to know how to claim it. I've spent the last 48 hours digging through the actual federal documentation, not the headlines, not the political spin, the real numbers. And what I found is this. There are 3 critical changes happening right now that affect your benefits, your tax situation, and yes, potential one-time payments that millions of seniors qualify for, but won't receive simply because they don't know to ask. I'm going to walk you through every single detail, step by step, so you know exactly what action to take before this window closes. Now, let me be crystal clear about something before we dive in. I'm not here to sell you hope or peddle some fantasy about free government money raining down from the sky. That's not how I operate, and that's not what's happening here. What we're dealing with is a legitimate adjustment to the Social Security system that Congress authorized, that the Social Security Administration is implementing, and that millions of Americans who paid into this system their entire working lives deserve to understand completely. So, let's cut through the noise and get down to the brass tacks of what's actually changing on February 11th and why it matters to your financial future. The first thing you need to understand is that the Social Security Administration operates on a very specific payment schedule. And February 11th is not just another random date on the calendar. It's a strategically important payment date that affects a massive portion of Social Security recipients. And it's the first time we're going to see some of these new provisions actually hit people's bank accounts. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, Dave, I get my Social Security check every month like clockwork. What's different this time? And that's exactly the question we need to answer because the difference is significant. And if you don't know what to look for, you might not even realize that your payment has changed or that you're eligible for additional funds. Let me walk you through the mechanics of how this is all working because understanding the system is the only way to make sure you're getting everything you're entitled to. The Social Security Administration doesn't just randomly decide to send out payments. Every single adjustment, every single change, every single dollar that moves through that system is governed by federal law and specific regulatory procedures. What's happening right now is the convergence of several different policy changes that were passed at different times. Some going back to last year, some that just got finalized in the last few weeks. And they're all coming together to create what looks like a perfect storm of benefit adjustments. Some of these adjustments are automatic, meaning the Social Security Administration will apply them to your account without you having to do anything. But others, and this is critical, require you to take specific action or meet specific criteria. And if you don't know what those criteria are, you're going to miss out. Let's talk about the cost of living adjustment first, because this is the foundation of everything else. The COLA that went into effect in January was one of the adjustments we saw. But what most people don't realize is that there are supplemental adjustments that can stack on top of that base COLA, depending on your specific circumstances. If you started receiving benefits before a certain date, if you're receiving benefits based on a spouse's work record, if you have dependent benefits attached to your claim, or if you fall into certain income brackets, there are additional calculations that the Social Security Administration has to process. And those calculations don't always happen instantaneously. February 11th is when a lot of those supplemental adjustments are scheduled to post to accounts, and we're talking about amounts that range anywhere from $50 to several hundred depending on your individual situation. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, and this is the part that a lot of people are calling stimulus checks, although technically that's not the accurate term. What we're actually dealing with is a series of one-time supplemental payments that are being issued to individuals who meet very specific eligibility requirements. These payments are coming from a combination of federal relief funds that were allocated but not fully distributed in previous years, and from budget reconciliation measures that created additional funding pools for Social Security recipients who were impacted by specific economic circumstances. The Social Security Administration has been tasked with identifying eligible recipients and getting these payments out the door. And February 11th is one of the key distribution dates they've set for this rollout. But let me tell you what's frustrating about this whole process. The communication from the government has been absolutely abysmal. I mean, we're talking about potentially thousands of dollars that some seniors are entitled to receive, and the information is buried in dense bureaucratic language on government websites that most people would need a law degree to decipher. That's why you've got millions of people out there who have no idea this is even happening, and they're going to wake up one morning and see a deposit in their account. Or worse, they're not going to see a deposit because they didn't meet some filing requirement that nobody told them about. This is exactly the kind of thing that drives me up the wall about how our government operates. These are people who worked their entire lives, who paid into the system, who did everything they were supposed to do, and now they're expected to navigate this maze of regulations just to get what's rightfully theirs. So let me break down the specific categories of people who are most likely to see these additional payments, because this is where the rubber meets the road. First, if you're receiving Social Security retirement benefits and your monthly payment amount is below a certain threshold, and that threshold varies depending on whether you're single, married, or receiving survivor benefits, you may qualify for what's being called a low-income supplement. This supplement is designed to bring your total annual benefit up to a minimum standard that Congress established based on the federal poverty guidelines adjusted for seniors. The Social Security Administration is supposed to automatically calculate this for you, but here's the problem. Their data isn't always current. If your income situation changed in the last year, if you had a spouse pass away, if you went from working part-time to being fully retired, any of those changes might not be reflected in their system yet, which means you might need to file an updated information form to make sure you're being evaluated correctly. Second, there's a category of supplemental payments for individuals who are receiving Social Security benefits during specific months in the previous year when there were documented gaps or delays in state-level assistance programs. This is getting into some wonky policy territory, but essentially what happened is that several states had computer system failures or administrative backlogs that prevented certain assistance programs from distributing funds on schedule. The federal government stepped in and allocated money to make those recipients whole. And that money is now being distributed through the Social Security system because it's the most efficient way to reach those individuals. If you live in one of the affected states and you were receiving benefits during those affected months, you should be getting a notice from the Social Security Administration, but again, the communication has been spotty at best. Third, and this is a big one that a lot of people don't know about, there are retroactive adjustments being made for individuals whose benefits were calculated based on earnings records that have since been corrected or updated. The Social Security Administration maintains your earnings record throughout your working life, and that record determines how much you receive in benefits when you retire. But sometimes there are errors in that record. Employers who didn't report your wages correctly, quarters where your earnings weren't properly credited, things like that. The Social Security Administration has been conducting a massive data reconciliation project, cross-referencing their records with IRS data and state employment records, and they've identified hundreds of thousands of cases where people's benefits should have been higher based on corrected earnings information. If you're one of those people, you're entitled to retroactive payments going back up to 6 years in some cases, and those payments are being processed and distributed on a rolling basis, with February 11th being one of the major processing dates. Now, I want to talk about what you need to do to make sure you're getting everything you're entitled to, because this is where knowledge becomes power and action becomes money in your pocket. The first thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is to create an account on the Social Security Administration's website if you don't already have one. I know some of you are saying, Dave, I'm not good with computers. I don't want to mess with all that online stuff. I get it, but this is too important to ignore. Your online Social Security account gives you access to your earnings record, your benefit calculation, your payment history, and any notices or alerts that the Social Security Administration has issued regarding your account. You can see exactly what you've been paid, when you were paid, and whether there are any pending adjustments or actions required on your part. If you absolutely cannot or will not create an online account, then you need to call the Social Security Administration's customer service line. And yes, I know that's a nightmare of hold times and automated menus, but you've got to do it. The second thing you need to do is review your most recent Social Security statement and compare it to your actual payment amounts. Look at what the statement says you should be receiving, and then look at what's actually being deposited into your bank account. If there's a discrepancy, that's a red flag that something needs to be investigated. It could be that you have Medicare premiums or other deductions being taken out that you weren't aware of. Or it could be that there's an error in how your benefits are being calculated. Either way, you need to know what's going on, and you need to get it resolved. The third thing, and this applies specifically to the supplemental payments we've been talking about, is to make sure your direct deposit information is current and accurate in the Social Security Administration system. These supplemental payments are being distributed electronically in the vast majority of cases. And if the Social Security Administration doesn't have correct banking information for you, that payment is going to get delayed or sent as a paper check, which takes longer and creates more opportunities for things to go wrong. Log into your account or call them and verify that they have the right bank account number and routing number on file. Here's something else that's important to understand about the timing of all this. February 11th is a payment date, but it's not the only payment date. And depending on your specific situation, you might receive adjustments or supplemental payments on a different date. The Social Security Administration distributes payments based on your birth date and when you first started receiving benefits, and they stagger the payments throughout the month to manage the volume. So, if you don't see something on February 11th, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not getting it. It might just mean your payment is scheduled for a different date later in the month, but you should be able to see pending payments or scheduled adjustments in your online account, which is another reason why having that account set up is so critical. Let me also address something that I know is on a lot of people's minds, which is taxes. Anytime you receive additional income, whether it's a cost of living adjustment, a supplemental payment, or a retroactive benefit correction, You need to think about the tax implications. Social Security benefits can be taxable depending on your total income, and if you receive a large lump sum payment, that could push you into a different tax bracket or affect your Medicare premiums for the following year. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. If you receive a significant supplemental payment, set aside a portion of it for taxes and talk to a tax professional about how to report it correctly. The last thing you want is to spend that money and then get hit with a tax bill you weren't expecting. And while we're talking about money management, let me give you some straight talk about what to do with these funds if and when you receive them. If this is money you weren't expecting, if this is truly a windfall, the smartest thing you can do is use it to strengthen your financial foundation. Pay off high-interest debt if you have any. Build up your emergency fund if it's not where it needs to be. Take care of deferred maintenance on your home or your car. Don't go blow it on things that don't matter, because this isn't play money. This is your money that you earned, that you're entitled to, and it deserves to be treated with respect and used wisely. The bottom line here is that February 11th represents a significant moment in the Social Security calendar for this year. And if you're a Social Security recipient, you need to be paying attention. The changes that are happening, the payments that are being distributed, the adjustments that are being made, all of this is real. All of this is documented, and all of this could have a material impact on your financial situation. But you cannot be passive about this. You cannot just assume that the government is going to take care of everything and make sure you get what you're owed. You have to be proactive, you have to be informed, and you have to be willing to advocate for